and welcome to the demo for Adobe Premiere video editing, and this is your starting video. To begin with, before you even open Premiere, have a look at your clips and make sure that everything is in order. Now you want to keep the clips in the same folder all the time, and don't move that folder and don't move the clips. Now, also organize all of your clips. For example, your sound edits right here, keep them in one folder. Your photographs, put them in another folder. All of your videos, you put in one folder. And if you have a special type of video like GoPro, put that in a different folder. And before you actually open Premiere, you want to determine the file size, what your sequence is going to be. What will be the dominant size of the video that you are making? So I can look at all of these, and down here you can see the size of them, 1920 by 1080. That's what I want. I want to pick a small clip which will work. See, these are almost all the same size except for one of them. Schadenfreude is a little bit smaller, so don't use that one as your starting clip. So I'm going to establish that it is fly. So I have all my clips in order here. And then what you do is you open Premiere, and then you wait for it to open. So this will be the first screen that pops up, and what you want to do is start a new project, and then this little window will pop up, and you have to give it a name. If you just leave it as Untitled, what happens is it tends to disappear amongst other videos called Untitled. So you could call it First Video. And then you want to put it in a particular designated spot. So you click Browse. And I have a place already ready to go. First Demo Video. Choose that. And then you write OK. So here is your basic working window. And down here is your bin. And you'll see it says Project, First Video, Media Browser, Library, Effects. Maybe you want to put effects next to the bin here, because that's where you'll open up your effects. Go back to the bin. This is your working window where you have your effect controls, your audio mixer. This is your timeline. It's your sequence. And this is where you put all of the clips where you work on. And here's your window. Right here is when you actually are working on clips in the sequence. Here's where you will see them. And you can organize how big you make each one. And sometimes you want it to expand the window screen here so that you can watch your videos very large. If you have a lot of layers in the sequence, you may want to raise this up. You may not need so many effect controls. So you can move these all around by just, when you get the double arrow there, you can move them up and down. So the first thing you want to do is you want to import some media. And what you'll do is you'll go to your clips for September 15th, 1920, and you can take them one by one and just drag them in there. Just click and point, click and drag. Or you can do them all at once. And the reason that you want them in separate folders is so that you will have all of these folders neatly organized. If you just drop all of your different clips in here, what will happen is you're just going to get a huge disorganized mess. Now, at some point, you're going to want a few more of these folders here, or these bins. For example, if you're going to make a lot of titles, we can just close that. If you're going to make a lot of titles, you can actually add more folders. So you just click there, New Bin, and it will have a name, and you can call this Titles. That's where the titles will go. Now, if it happens that you end up with a few clips just loose in here, you can make another bin, and we'll just call this Extra Clips. Okay. Now, the first thing you want to do is just take one clip and put it onto the sequence. And what it will do is it will establish the parameters or the file size of that sequence. And then everything after that will will fit into that particular sequence. Now, if you make a new sequence, you'll have to drop another video clip in there just to establish the parameters of that sequence. And we've got them in other videos. And you just have to double click on one of the folders and it opens up. And if you want to go back to the main project, you can either click on the entire project right here, or you can click onto the project video right there. So again, we'll open that one up. And the one that we wanted was fly. And so all you do is you click on it and drag it into the sequence. And it automatically establishes a screen the exact same size as the original clip. So here you can see your sequence so far. And this is your cursor. You can drag the cursor along there and you can watch the video. It doesn't have a soundtrack, so you won't hear anything. Now, you can expand or shrink the actual sequence. If you have a lot of clips in here and you want to see them all stuck together, you can expand it, or you can zoom in on it. Let's say you need to just cut 1 or 2 frames off. That's how you could do it. And wherever your cursor is will kind of center if you shrink or expand it. Now, if you want to expand it and you want the cursor to be back at the beginning, make sure you put the cursor there first, and then you can expand it or shrink it. The sequences, what we see here, you can make more than one sequence at a time, particularly if you're going to be working on a lot of different little bits of the video and you want to keep them separate. So here is how you would make another sequence. You go to File, New, Sequence. And this will pop up. And you probably want to pick 1080i or 60i, so it's 29 frames per second actually. Choose that, and there you go. Now you can see it makes a new sequence here, and I've already made another bin for sequences, so you can just put that into there. Okay, so now you see you can jump back and forth between your sequences. So then you want to put in your next sequence another video, and I'm going to pick one of the longer ones that I need to chop up. So I'm going to drag it on there. And you see it says clip mismatch warning. So you can either change the sequence settings, because when you make a new sequence, it'll establish its own size of sequence setting. But generally you want to make it the same size as the others. So you say change sequence settings, and then it will match this completely. And this is the same size as the other ones. Now, we're not going to be working on the audio right now. I'll work on the audio a little bit later by highlighting the audio track and then clicking delete. You can, in fact, if you want, you can just erase the audio. Now, this one's quite a bit longer than the other one. It's about 2.5 minutes long. And let's say you don't want the entire video. You just want a little piece of it, maybe from here to here. So here's your toolbox. This is the pointer. If you want to move things around, you can use that pointer. If you want to select everything to one side of that arrow, you use that. And here is your razor blade. The razor is for slicing your clip into different pieces. So we might want to expand this to see exactly where we want to cut. So we say we want it, let's say we want to get rid of all that stuff at the beginning. You can move the cursor to there. Then you take your razor blade and you cut it. And then maybe you want it going up to there. That's far enough, and then you cut it again. Then you take your pointer. With the selection tool is where you can highlight clips on your sequence and you can move them around. So you can just click on there and delete it, click on it and delete it. And there's several ways of then moving this clip to the beginning of the sequence. You can click on this open little section here and just hit delete and it will delete it. Or you can undo that. You can just click on it and move it there. Or you may not want to move it to the end. You may want to put another video here. Now, let's say that you accidentally cut a little bit too much off. That doesn't really matter. You can actually attach that back on again as you use your pointer tool. You can click on the end. You'll see that little icon there with the bracket and the little arrow. And you can just drag it along like this. And you'll see up in this monitor, you'll actually see the video itself. And you can just move it to exactly where you like. There you go. So whenever you cut part of these clips off, you never ruin the entire clip. It's only on the sequence here. Because if you go back into the bin and you want to look at this clip, the way you look at it is you double click on it and it comes into here and you look at the source movie. And you'll see that you've got the entire video still. So it doesn't actually affect the videos in the bin here. It just makes a new clip. So you can chop these up as much as you want. So let's say you want to take one chunk of this and move it over here. You would take your razor blade, cut it, and then get your pointer tool and you can move it over here. Okay, that's one way of taking a clip and cutting it up and moving it around in the timeline. Now, let's say you have a very long clip and you don't want to put the entire clip on there. You can again double click on this and your video comes up here. And let's say you just want little segments of this video to be interspersed there. So you can move your cursor along. And again, even if you cut it too short, you can still lengthen it on the timeline again. So you put your cursor exactly where you would like it, the end point of the clip. And here you got these two little brackets here. This is mark in or mark out. But the key shortcut would be just press I or O, and I'll do both of them right here. So here I'll click mark in, and then I'll go to the point as far as I would like it to about, let's say there, and then do mark out. Now you could take this video and you can drop it onto the timeline there. You can just drag it along and drop it on. Now that's one way of dropping it on there. Another way of dropping it on, we're going to put the cursor right here and I'll show you what not to do. Now let's say we want another clip here. Maybe from there, that will be the mark out, and I'll just click O. And maybe to here. And you just hit the key I, and then you get another clip here. Now you also have these little symbols here. You don't have to drag it on there. You can actually use these two symbols to drop it. And one of them actually, the key shortcut is a comma, and the other one is a period. So you could just click this for insert, but it will insert it exactly where you had your cursor. If you didn't want it there, you have to think about exactly where you want to place it. So, and we'll just undo it, I guess. And let's say you want it between these two here. You can do that. So then you could just click the insert, or you could do the comma, and it will just pop it in there. But let's say you want to overwrite something. Here's how you do it. Let's say you want to overwrite this part from about there to there. You put your cursor there, and we'll just randomly take another chunk here. That chunk, and if we want to just drop it in there, you could just click this thing, overwrite. And it will just fill up a space about as big as that. And if you decided that was a mistake, you can just click Command Z to undo. So that's how you move clips from this monitor onto the sequence. So we'll now go to the other sequence and very quickly do the same thing and then copy and paste it onto the first sequence. Okay, so let's say now I want to put all of these video clips with the other sequence. Is you can just select all, so you could go Edit, Select All, or Command A, and then you do Edit, Copy, or Command C. You go to the next sequence, and depending where you want to drop it, move your cursor there, and then you do Command V. Now, if you want to insert it in between one of these, we'll erase that again. If I want to insert those, let's say between these two, you would do Edit, Paste, Insert, and that way it would insert it between the two. You do Shift, Command V. There you go. So that is essentially how you put things onto the timeline in a simple way. So in the next section, I'm going to show you some other tools, and I'm going to show you how to use the motion tools if you want to move around or resize one of your clips or all of your clips. So we need to put another video on this timeline here that we can change the size of. Now I have one video that's actually fairly small, and I don't want the entire thing. Maybe from about here till about there. And you'll see here that it's actually much smaller. The file size is a lot smaller, so it'll occupy the screen to the same proportion. So anytime you want to work on, whether you're doing effects, motion, anything, and you want to work on a particular clip, you have to highlight it with the pointer tool. And once you highlight it, you can go into Effect Controls here. And you'll see that you have motion would be position, scale, rotation, anchor point, don't worry about those, and opacity. And each one of those, you can actually change these numbers on them. You can change the values of all these settings the first way by hovering the cursor, click and drag, or you can actually open it up like this. Or you can actually just type numbers in if you like. So I'll just show you this. You can open this up and you can change the scale so that it fits. Now you're going to see that it doesn't actually go past 200. So then you're just going to have to use these numbers, and you drag, we'll just close this, and you can drag these along to pretty well any size that you want. If you want it to fill in the screen, you can go a little bit further, or you can just fill it up to, you see these particular edges here. Okay, and then we're going to put one other one in there. We'll go to the GoPros, and we just want a little chunk of this one here. And you'll see that it has a different aspect ratio. And we'll drag it onto there. And if you want it a bit longer, you can stretch it out. Now you're going to see it, it's actually larger than the screen itself, so you can click on this, go to Effect Controls, and you can drag it down a little bit smaller. Now let's say you don't want to waste any of the video, and you want to stretch it out so it fits this, even though it stretches the video. You can unhook your uniform scale, and then you can change the aspect ratio of them like this. There you go. But then you have to remember that you've done that, because anytime you want to change the size of this, you're going to have to change both the height and the width. Okay, now let's say I want to shrink all of these, and I want to put them onto one screen, and perhaps one video in each corner. So let's just click on the first one, and let's say we want to put it I want to put 4 videos on this particular screen. So I'll show you also how to move something that you've changed the scale of. Okay, now there's two things to think about. So I want to put 4 videos in here. So I click on that and I can change the scale. But I know I want it 50%, so you can just click on there and type in 50 and hit return, and it'll make it 50%. And I know it'll fill up 1/4 of the screen. Now, you can move this in a couple of different ways. This is the various positions. You can drag these back and forth. It goes up and down. Or you can just click on motion, and it puts a little wireframe around here, and you can move them by hand. It's a little bit more accurate to use these to move it around. Okay, and now let's say that you want to put one of these in each corner. So we'll scale this down to 50 and then move this to one of the corners. But we want them all in the same screen, right? So then you just have to stack them on top of each other like this. And then you can stretch that out so it's the same length. Now we're going to take this Schadenfreude here, and we're going to have to scale it to a different size. And this is where you wouldn't type in 50. You just scale it as well as you can. And you can move it along here. Now, you may want to get rid of that black band, and there's a couple ways of doing it. One would be to use the crop tool. So here for the crop tool, we go into Effects. You open the tab Video Effects, and you go down to Transform and Crop. Now, when you want to actually use one of these effects, you just drag it into the effect controls like that. And then here you can see you can crop the sides, or you can crop the top or the bottom. So we're going to want to crop a little bit off the top there and crop a little bit off the bottom. And then click motion and put it kind of into place where you want. And then if you actually want to change the aspect ratio so it fills it up, you can do that. And you have to get rid of the uniform scale. And the last one we'll put on is the GoPro here. So we want to cut that to about 1/4 the size. And you might want to put it back onto uniform scale so you can scale it first. And so first put it into place. And you scale it up so it kind of fills that space. And then you can change the uniform scale and change the width of it. There you go. So there you have 4 videos at a time. Now I'm going to show you 2 other functions with motion and how to actually move it. So you can click on this, you can scale it down. And let's say we want to move it from here to across, and you want to change the size of it. And let's change the opacity. That's right here. You can make it more or less opaque. So if you're doing an overlay, that's useful. Okay, so I want this image to move from one corner to the next. You have to put your cursor at the beginning of the clip, and then you can change the position of it and just drag it to here. We'll say from there. And what you need to do is you need to put in keyframes. You can see there are these little toggles here. Click those toggles. And you see, when you click the toggle, it puts in a keyframe. There's the keyframe right there. And then you can move your cursor to the other end. And once you've already clicked the toggles, you can now just move this across here. and then you'll see it moves across. Now, if you like to, you can actually, let's say you want to speed that up, you can move these keyframes around. So you'll see then it won't move right away. It'll sit there for a while, and then it'll zoom across, and then it will stop. So you can move them back again. Or let's say you want to change the size of it so it goes from being larger to smaller. So I'm going to undo this one keyframe here. You can just click on a keyframe and get rid of it because I want to change the scale right there. I'm going to make it actually smaller at first. And then I'll move it halfway here. And I will make it larger. And once you've already put in the toggle, the keyframes go in automatically. So I can make it larger. And then I can move it across here and make it smaller again. Now, let's say you want to change the opacity as it goes. You can again, you click the toggle, and then you can put your opacity down to, well, let's say we'll keep that at 100, and then we'll move it halfway up here and put the opacity down to really low. And then when you go to the end, you crank it back up. So you'll see it fade out. And now I'll show you one other motion. Now, if you want to get rid of the entire set of keyframes, you can just click this and it will delete them all. So your opacity will stay the same. Now I want to do one other thing, is I want this to rotate. I want it to spin around. So I'll go back to the beginning and you can click on rotation. You can move it to the to the middle and then just drag this along, or you can do it by opening that up, but for just to drag this number like that, and you can put it at whatever number of degrees that you want. And once you go past once around, it goes 1 times and then 2 times. And then when I get to the end here, I want it to spin back again, so I can just click on there, 0. Doesn't look like it did anything until you go back again. So here we'll see it spin across the screen. And if you decide that you didn't want to change the scale of it, you can just click that middle keyframe and delete it. And you'll see it stays the same. Now, if you really like, you could just put on top of this. And then you'll see what happens here. Now, a good exercise here would be to see if you could start with all of these images in the middle and then move out to the corners. See if you can try that. So that's it for today. This is how you use the sequence, how you use the motion, how you use movement in there, and opacity, along with cropping.